the whole idea of wanting to be in a band started coming about. Um, I'd go over to my friend's house, and then uh, there would just be like a drum set and guitars, guitar amps and bass amps set up in a room, uh, and I'd watch my friends play, and then it started catching on.
A warm welcome to
Okay.
Planet Guitar today to bassist and founding member of Dream Theater, John Myung.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
John, excuse me for starting with this, but I know fans were concerned to see you performing in Washington with a head injury. But you said that you didn't mind me asking you to say a few words about it today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, that event um was triggered by just dehydration. Yeah, we were doing a lot of long travels, and it was the part of the tour where we were just constantly traveling. And even like our days off, we would just check into a hotel and shower and then pretty much just get back on the bus and head to where we were going. So I think it was like the 13th night we were on the bus. And during that whole period, apparently I just wasn't drinking enough water. I was kind of just very dehydrated. And you know, I went to bed, and then around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up at a border checkpoint as we were crossing back into uh North America, the US, into Washington from Canada. And I just, I got up really quick, went inside the building, and I was waiting online, and I felt like I really needed water. Um, but I was already off the bus, and I was like, well, I'm not going to run back onto the bus and grab a bottle of water. I'm in the building, so I'm just going to wait. I was waiting online, and then next thing I knew it, I passed out. And there was a metal post in front of me that the right side of my forehead hit, and then just cut me open, and I woke up, and then I realized what happened, that I passed out, and but I was well taken care of. Went to a hospital uh, in Bellevue, Washington, and they did a great job in stitching me back up, and I was ready to go. It was just a really long night for everybody, uh, but we got through it.
I understand it was touch and go whether you cancelled the concert that night.
Yeah, well, I think everyone was kind of worried about the nature of the fall that I had.
Hmm.
Um, but everything checked out all right, and I felt great. And the last thing I wanted to do was cancel the show. It was like, no way, I'm not going to cancel this. I feel great,
Hmm.
you know. I'm drinking my water. I'm back up and running.
Hmm.
Um, and we got through the show, and and I've been feeling normal ever since. So uh, it was just a lesson in hydration and traveling. How you know it can be kind of inconvenient, having to kind of focus on your hydration and all that, but you really do have to keep up with it. I mean, I learned my lesson
Hmm.
the hard way,
Hmm.
so I'm keeping up with it. I mean, I normally do carry around a liter bottle of water, but I stopped doing that. Um, Only because it's just like, I don't know, it's a hard life living on the bus, uh, and I tend to limit my water when we do that kind of extensive traveling. But but I just have to stay more on top of it, you
Hmm.
know. So don't underestimate the benefits of water. You know, your life will not flow without it.
Good message. Thank you. Going back to your roots, you were raised in Long Island, but your parents are from South Korea. Were they musical at all? Or...
My mom was, she, you know, grew up listening to classical music on the piano. Um, and she uh, got me into like the Suzuki method of violin at a young age. Um, and that's how I learned. You know, I was like 5 years old and I learned Suzuki violin method, and that's when I started playing uh, an instrument at age 5 at violin. And I played it for about, oh, I'd say about, you know, 10, 11 years. And then, you know, got really drawn to rock music.
Hmm.
Um, and basically something connected, you know, when I was listening to bands like Rush, and I'd hear the music, and they were like everything for me. You know, I really looked up to bands. You know, we would just listen to records all the time. You know, Rush, yes. Uh, it was just a real powerful connection with playing in like in a band situation, and just being really drawn to rock music. And you know, I knew John Petrucci. We lived in the same town, and we just connected. We would find time every day after school to get together and to work out stuff. And and then one thing led to another. We went to Berkeley, then we met Mike Portnoy, and then we started.
Oh, can we come back to that? Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Just ask you a little bit more about your family. What ties did you have with South Korea growing up?
Well, my parents are both from there. My mother side of the family fled from the war, and she actually immigrated. Um, you had to be sponsored back then in order to come into the country, and a nun sponsored her um, in Chicago, and you also had to, you know, be in a profession. And she came over as a nurse, and and my father came over as a student, and that's where they both met in Chicago, and that's where I was born.
But did you return as a youngster with them to Seoul from time to time?
No, um, no, it was pretty much a few years, I guess, in Chicago, and then we moved to New York. Um, I lived like around where Columbia University is in New York City. I lived in that neighborhood. Um, there was a hospital there that my mom worked at, and and that's where I grew up. You know,
Did you speak
uh,
Korean with your parents?
they wanted to very Americanize me, you know, and they wanted me to like really focus on learning American and English, and not wanting to confuse me. Little did they know that you can't confuse a child. A child will just soak everything up like a sponge.
Ah,
Um, so, you know, I would hear a conversation, but we wouldn't really engage. It was always English, you know,
I see.
and and that's, you know, it didn't bother me. I mean, I grew up that way.
Is Eastern philosophy important to you?
Um, I think connecting with people is important to me. I don't really separate people by um, where they come from or what their religion is. It's like it's more about connecting with people. If they treat me right, I treat them right. It's more of a respect thing.
Hmm.
I think there's founding principles that bond it all together, so it's all sort of uh, it's all sort of one.
Hmm.
There's a great book called The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell.
Hmm.
It was actually an interview that he did with Bill Moyers, and that kind of sums it up for me. You know, I mean, Joseph Campbell is a scholar of religion, and he studied extensively, and he boiled everything down to one myth, and that just made a whole lot of sense to me. How it's all sort of stemming from one central idea.
Okay, wonderful. You mentioned earlier that you met John Petrucci when you were very young. How old were you actually when you met him?
Oh, I was in like seventh or eighth grade. It was like junior high school, so it was like right out of elementary school.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know, however old I was then. Well, graduated was 18, so it's like go back 6 years, like around 12, 13 years old. Um, we knew each other, and then at around 15, the whole idea of wanting to be in a band started coming about. Um, I'd go over to my friend's house, and then uh, there would just be like a drum set and guitars, guitar amps and bass amps set up in a room, uh, and I'd watch my friends play, and then it started catching on. Then other friends of mine would pick up an instrument, and then one thing led to another. A friend of mine that lived down the street from me needed a bass player, and I gave it a try, and I loved it.
What was your first bass? What was the brand?
First, it was something inexpensive. Um, Not even quite sure of the brand. Um, it was just like a tobacco sunburst sort of precision type uh, copy, generic version um, that I started playing. But but then everything changed, once I started getting really into it. Then I got a Rickenbacker,
Uh-huh.
and then it started getting better amps and pedals, and
Uh-huh.
uh, pretty much I was just playing nonstop all the time.
And now you're wedded to your signature bongo bass. Um, is this a marriage that's forever, do you think?
I think so. In terms of in terms of having something that really works on all levels for me, um, it touches upon everything that I should be doing and everything that I need out of the instrument. So, I love it.
Mm.
It's very unique,
Mm.
and I'm very appreciative to be able to have something like this.
As you mentioned earlier, you met John Petrucci and Mike Poitney at the Berklee College of Music, and you all decided to drop out at the same time. Might you have, if you hadn't met them, might you not have dropped out, or were you ready to leave and dedicate yourself to music?
Well, I don't know. I can't really answer that question. I mean, we were very serious about sticking together and being a band. So that was a collective decision that we came to. And we were all ready to go back. that fall. Um, but then we realized, it would detract from our ability to kind of do what we're doing, and it'd be more sense to kind of go for it and to just kind of focus on what we were doing, which was playing every night. Uh, we would get together between 6 p.m. and 12 a.m. every night, Monday through Friday, and just do whatever, you know, work an idea and build it to a song, and then slowly the song would get refined. And, you go back to this part, oh, let's change this. So, like, the first couple of records, we had a lot of time to create the material because it was like you had the original idea and then you had all that time up until it was released to actually sit with it and make changes. And so it was like uh, it evolved, many years sort of sitting with the material that went into our breakthrough album, which was our second album, Images and Words.
Mm.
And ever since then, it hasn't been that way because it's all sort of built on deadlines.
Mm.
You know, we have to go into here, and there's only this much time we have to do this, and then you tour, and then you get back, you have a short break. Um, so you never get that period that you had before you became successful. Once the machine gets turning, um, it's pretty dramatic, um, and it's very demanding, and it's a whole different mindset, really. But but that's one of the transitions that had to happen in order for us to do what we do.
You must have had a tremendous rush of energy, the three of you, to be leaving and dedicating yourself to music at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I look back on those years, and yeah, we were very, very motivated. I mean, we still are.
Mm.
We're still motivated, but it's amazing how when you're young, how you could just push yourself. Um, and I kind of relate to that with my kids now, um, because they can push themselves. They could stay up all night, get an hour's sleep, and do what they have to do the next day. And um, but I'm not like that. I need to go to bed at a certain hour. I need to get my rest. All those things become important uh, the older you get. So yeah, so looking back, it is that's one of the greatest things I think about being young is your ability to kind of really push yourself and bounce back. Your recovery time is very quick. That's one of the things I miss about youth, you know.
Yeah,
But but when as you get older, you see more things and you learn a lot more, and you learn a lot more too. So it's a trade-off.
sure. You've cited as influences in terms of bass guitarists, bassists from Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden and Yes and Rush, of course, but you've also cited Jaco Pastorius. And I'm just wondering whether you are a fan of jazz.
I love all music. Um, Music is music. It's about connecting with notes and deriving a feeling from it. And but I would say in terms of what I want to do personally, it's more rock based. I like the energy of rock. I like the immediacy of rock,
Hmm.
and It's more of the way I'm wired musically.
Mm.
Um, but I have an appreciation for all forms of music. Jazz is great. I mean, I love listening to certain jazz records I used to listen to a lot, by Miles Davis, Yellow Jackets. Um, when I went to Berkeley, a lot of people were listening to Weather Report, Jocko, um, things of that nature. But my heart was always in rock music.
Mm. If your fans had to choose their favorite dream theatre albums, many of them would choose Images and Words, Awake, Metropolis Part 2, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Would you share those fans' views?
Well, that's all the earlier material.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I understand it. Absolutely. I mean, there was a certain, you know, we were definitely connecting, and and things definitely were flowing musically in terms of just in terms of chemistry and things like that. Um, I mean, I understand where they're coming from, because a lot of times, there is something special about the early part of band's career and the material there. And then things do change because life changes and you don't really know where it's going to go. And then for whatever reason, things change, So uh, I could I relate to that somewhat. Yeah.
But it was The Alien from a View from the Top of the World, which won you your Grammy, which is obviously far more recent.
Right. Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's all timing. With things like that, I see it as timing is, if you just happen to write the right track at the right time, and that's sort of how that works.
It's not really explicit, but does The Alien reflect the band's concern for the planet's ecological decline?
Lyrically, I think that was James's lyrical interpretation and direction lyrically. And so it's sort of that theme that inspired that song. Um, so that's more of personal observation from James's lyrical perspective.
Is that a matter of great concern for members of your band?
Um, I think it's a great concern for everybody. I mean, take care of what you have, and there's not another one of these planets anywhere nearby. So we got to take care of it. I mean, that's just common sense. So anything along those lines, um, you can't dispute that. I mean, why would you not want to take care of where you live?
Well, I completely agree with you. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who deny that there's any climate change happening or is any problem. That's why I mention it. It's very strange, but there are a large amount of people who deny it.
Well, it's sort of like, um, I don't know, it's sort of like there's a lot of other things that are involved. Um, but just from what makes sense to me, if you're careful about what's it saying, waste not, want not.
Hmm.
and I think there's a lot. I mean, there's always progress being made. So hopefully, the progress will lead us towards positive change.
Outside of Dream Theater, you've collaborated a few other bands. Is there any chance you might work with Ty and Rod again?
I don't see why not. I think we're all kind of just caught up in our own uh respective bands. You know,
Mm,
that's more of something that we do um when there's extra time.
mm.
But the older you get, I mean, that's what you realize you have less of. I feel the need to be more focused, um, only because I don't have the energy to do half of what I could easily do, you know. I mean, I could, you know, when I was half my age, I could easily do double the workload that I could do now. Um, so I think it's just the balance of whether or not we all have the time. And I mean, it's definitely a rewarding experience, but it's a lot of it's a lot of work to do uh to do things over and above your normal routine. And so I think it's just a question of practicality. You know, how much time does everyone really have, um, and things along those lines.
Are you and John in regular touch with Mike Portnoy?
Yeah, we stay in touch. You know, to get together every so often for dinner here and there, for birthday occasions and things like that.
And do your conversations ever extend to possible future music collaborations?
Well, the future is always open to that. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. In one of your interviews, you picked out Italian crowds as being full of energy and singing along, and you feeding off that energy. Was there a particular moment that stands out for you now in any of those concerts?
Every concert uh, pulls the same sort of desire out of you and our crew. And it's sort of just this big performance on everyone's part to get it right. And everyone just kind of putting in their best effort, do the best they possibly can. Um, and the things that do different is the crowds are different. The way they express themselves are different. And that's okay because um, that's how people connect. Everyone connects to things differently. It's just interesting. I think it's just uh, cultural dynamics um, and sort of the communication factor. Everyone has a way of communicating things and showing things differently.
Many musicians regard you, as you know, as one of the best bassists in the world. What do you do to keep challenging yourself?
The main thing is trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out what it is that I actually do, and to try to direct it. You know, because a lot of it in the beginning is spontaneous. You're just reacting, you're playing, you're putting the time in. And when I come up with when I play something that I think is good enough to be an idea or an album, I don't really question where it came from or why it sort of falls under that category. I just record it and make a point of not forgetting it. But I think now I'm sort of questioning, well, what is it? Why does these set of notes and the way I played it hit me as something that's a strong idea? And why is any other group of random notes just that to me? So it's sort of like I think you're trying to mix and match with the feeling that you have, or this there's something in you, and you're trying to find something that uh resonates with that or matches it, or it's something that you feel. You don't really hear it because if you heard it, you'd be able to play it right away. So it's sort of like as you practice, it's sort of like you're always on this sort of adventure of discovery, right?
Mm.
And then when you do play something and you're like, wow, that's great. I'm gonna keep that. So um I mean that part of it is all work because you don't I mean sometimes something magically will just happen, but most of the time it's a result of just the time that you put in. If you don't put the time in, you can't really expect it to happen. So so that's where the labor comes in. That's one of the great things about being in a band is that when you have, in the case of Dream Theater, you have four other people apart from myself. Um, Thinking along those lines, you just have this melting pot of uh, energy,
Mm.
you know.
Mm. I understand you're about to record your 16th album. Can you tell us where you are with that?
Oh, we haven't started yet. I think we're all just taking a break right now. We're going to take a break until holidays, and then the plan is to start next year, early next year.
Uh-huh. I believe you've got a democratic composition process. And one of the nicest things I've read is that when you have problems, you work together to sort them out. And you said it's all about team spirit. It seems to me that you and John Petrucci in particular have demonstrated that all your life. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I remember having conversations with John in school and stuff, and we always kind of connected. He was always someone that you could just talk to about anything. And yeah, so it's a real kind of special relationship that we have.
You can tell it. It's been really lovely talking to you, John. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye bye.
All right, bye-bye.